Hi everyone, Ashley here and welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. Today I have what appears to be quite a simple card using some of Lawn Fawn's newest stamp sets that they released as part of their Fall and Winter 2020 release. So without further ado, let's get into the card making. Like I mentioned, this card is on the simpler side for me, and that's because I tend to overfill my scenes with so many different images and critters and lots of Copic coloring and things like that. So that's my favorite mechanism for card making, but for today I decided to try something a little bit different, and that is colored pencils on kraft cardstock. And everything is in one layer. So all of my images are stamped directly onto that kraft cardstock, and I've just colored directly onto that entire panel, and that's it. No fussy cutting of images, no Copic coloring, no big scenes, no background pieces or anything like that. So I thought that it was a little bit different, and I really like the way that it turned out. So I hope that you have a chance to try something like this as well. So to build my scene, to start with, like I said, everything is just going to be stamped directly onto this paper. So I wanted to build a big pile of leaves. So I started by using that little pile of leaves image that comes in the Lawn Fawn Let's Go Nuts stamp set. And like I mentioned, this is one of their newer stamp sets that they've just released, and it has all these adorable little squirrels in it and lots of different leafy and fall type images, which is really cute. So because I knew I wanted so many of these leaf piles kind of overlapping and making an even bigger pile together, I knew I had to mask some of them off so that they don't overlap with each other while I stamp them. So as you can see, I'm just stamping those images onto some Post-it paper, and this is Post-it paper that has a fully adhesive back, so the entire back of the Post-it is sticky. And I just cut it out with scissors, so I fussy cut the whole piece. And as I'm doing that, when I'm masking and fussy cutting out a mask, the important thing is just to make sure that you're cutting right on the edge of the image, so right up against the black line. And it's okay if you cut into the image a little bit and into the black line. It's better that you do that than cut outside of the black line, because you want the images to really be sort of jutted up against each other. You want the stamping to be perfect and really meet the other lines. So you don't want any excess Post-it kind of getting in the way of that. So really just try to make sure that when you're cutting out your mask to really cut close to that line, and you should have pretty good results. So as I'm going through, I'm just continuing to stamp more and more of those little leaf piles to build up the bigger pile, and as I'm doing that, I'm just making sure to mask off any piles of leaves that are touching. And once I've done that and I have the pile built up how I want, I just remove all those masks, which is the most fun part, and then I can see that beautiful leaf pile that's built up beneath. So next is to stamp a little squirrel that's standing on top of the leaf pile playing with his leaves, and then to stamp a whole bunch of individual leaves that are sort of like meant to be being thrown in the air by the little squirrel as he plays. So for this, I'm just using a little acrylic block and just taking each of the little individual stamp images that come in that stamp set and just sort of scattering them around the top of the card, as if the squirrel has sort of thrown them into the air like I mentioned. For all of the stamping, I am using my favorite things, Extreme Black ink, which I find is a really beautiful and nice solid black ink. Off camera, I did go ahead and stamp out the sentiment at the bottom there as well. I stamped out Happy Fall, and this was just using individual ABCs. Actually, I think I used Milo's ABCs from Lawn Fawn, and I just stamped one letter at a time. I thought it would be pretty boring to watch on video, so I just did that off camera. So now it's time for the coloring, and like I mentioned, I am using colored pencils for this, which is a medium that I don't often turn to, but I really just wanted to try something a little bit different. I do have this beautiful set of Faber-Castell pencil crayons, which I treated myself to a while ago, and I don't use often enough, so I was really happy to test them out and use them for this. For each leaf, I used two tones. So for some of the leaves, I used sort of a red and a yellow. For some of them, I used an orange and a brown, and for others, I used a green and a brown. And in all cases, I sort of just used one color at the bottom and then the second color at the top, and just tried to overlap the colors a little bit as I colored with the colored pencils to try to get a little bit of a blend going. Although they didn't blend, the same way Copic markers would, I still think that it looks really pretty, and even having that separation between the colors is an interesting detail that is really nice. So I am going to skip ahead here, so you don't have to watch every leaf being colored, but I did color them all in the same way. Now I decided I wanted even more leaves behind that squirrel so that it didn't look like he was just sort of standing in air on top of the leaves. I wanted him to be sort of in that leaf pile. So I did even more masking to make sure that I wasn't stamping on top of anything. I even masked off the squirrel, and then I just stamped one more pile of leaves behind him. I just used a little black marker to fill in any little bits that got missed with the stamping, and then I can color those in again. So this just helps make the squirrel a little bit more grounded in that leaf pile. Now I can go ahead and color the squirrel, and again I'm just using some colored pencils for this. I used 2 different shades of brown. For the darker shade of brown, I just colored in places where I thought there would be more shadow, and then I used a lighter shade of brown to sort of fill in the rest. And I used pretty much even pressure on the pencil crayon throughout. I am by no means a pencil crayon coloring expert, so do not follow my advice, but I think this turned out okay. I used a white pencil crayon to kind of try and blend the colors together, and then I came back in with the darker color and just kind of went over the edges where it blended in with the lighter brown with sort of a lighter hand, and that helped sort of add a bit of a blended tone as well. So that is the squirrel all colored. And finally, I went back and finished coloring all those leaves that are in the air, and for these I just used the exact same colors and technique that I used for those leaves in the bottom pile there. So again, just 2 tones per leaf and just sort of trying to blend them together a little bit, but not too much. To finish off the coloring for this scene, I did just take a brown pencil crayon and sort of trace around the bottom of that leaf pile and just kind of add a little bit of wispy blendingness to that as well. And that's just to sort of, again, add a little bit of grounding and shadow to this scene that would otherwise just sort of be there on its own on the paper. So to finish off the card, I just used some Lawn Fawn brown plaid patterned paper as a background border and a little piece of fun foam to sort of elevate that entire colored panel onto the card base so that it adds a little bit of dimension. And that is the card complete. It was very hard not to add more elements to this, as I'm used to more gemstones or sequins or anything, but I really liked it in its simplicity, and I think that the effect came out really nicely. So thank you so much for watching the video today. I hope that you learned something about coloring with pencil crayons, or even at the very least just trying a technique that you don't usually go to and seeing how it works out. So I hope that you have fun with that, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye!